Japanese titles and Mexican titles in a way that maybe was a little unprofessional, or she didn't give like a lot of just notice before joining WWE. And it's also mentioned that she always wanted to work with WWE. So, I mean, I do want to talk about, is Stephanie Vaquer actually better off in WWE versus AEW? And we'll talk about that. I think the first thing that I'm going to say is that obviously, there were people. When you had the match with Mercedes Moné, the reason why people cheered for Stephanie was because when you looked at the construction of the match, Stephanie was putting on like a hell of a performance. Like she was really just trying to overcome Mercedes Moné, really, and everybody knew that Mercedes was going to win, really. So she really looked like it's almost like if you watch like a Seth Rollins, like imagine Seth Rollins was on the main roster. He did a great job for a couple of months, and he's getting his first shot at the WWE title. And you see him wrestle John Cena, and then you watch like him do all this stuff, all this hard work for like 20, 30 minutes, and it's like you know where it's going to go. It's going to be like, okay, no matter what, Cena's going to win. Automatically, you create a dynamic of that hard worker versus the privileged person. So I really think it was kind of a reaction of just saying you see Stephanie Vaquer be this hard worker, try to overcome, and you know that's not going to happen really, But this is kind of why I say with AEW, they need to work on subverting expectations. Sometimes, what would have happened if you actually had Stephanie Vaquer win that match, and then maybe a week or two later, she drops the titles, and then it goes back to Mercedes Moné, because she talks to the Young Bucks or something like that, and she gets it because of privilege. It would help her become more of a heel, but at least at the show, you showed that, okay, with AEW, you can be a little unpredictable, because with AEW, they have an issue with predictability, really. So I do think that dynamic would have been better, really. But when I think about the other part of it is that sometimes you may want a wrestler that just had a really great match just actually debut. Like the best examples, you look at the X Division Fatal 4-Way at Destination X. Like I think it was in 2011, when you had Zema Ion, Austin Aries, Jack Evans, and I think it was Anthony Nese or Tony Nese or somebody like that. They had that 4-way match, and it was like really stellar and really excellent. And many of like their qualifying matches were excellent. That they really wanted some of those people on the roster. Really, like sometimes it's good to follow that momentum, but I also think that sometimes you have to think about what company you're signing to. Like obviously those wrestlers, if they're going to be signed to a 2020s NXT, that would be best for them, because being in TNA wrestling, you're not going to get as much exposure. And if you remember that time, it was really just not a good company to be in, because they're being experimental, and that helped them. But it was still the Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff trying to reenact WCW company, So you have to think about what company you're going to, Whereas with Stephanie Vaquer, you look at AEW and you look at the problems there. That definitely, I really think that they're AEW is coming back, really. Like I do think that they're working harder, they're making better shows. They really care about being a company. I really feel that way. But you've seen like how much negativity you got from August really until, I would say, it really took until maybe like Double or Nothing. Like really, post Swerve Strickland become the champion, for them to get off the CM Punk negativity, and part of it was just because of their immature response to the CM Punk drama. And the other issue is that when you look at the women's roster in AEW, it's actually a very bad division. As I said, you have you have Athena, who's going to be a 600-day champion really soon. She is not even celebrated as that. Like, why wouldn't she be on the main roster? Wouldn't she want to be on the main roster? Wouldn't she want to say, I deserve a match at Wembley Stadium? You have Mercedes Moné, who's the most over woman on your roster, but she should get to a point where she should just say the TBS Championship and the Women's Championship, you need to unify it. So therefore, she's holding like the women's championship because you can't have somebody like Mercedes Moné be holding a secondary women's title. So that's not a good look. And then also you had Jade Cargill hold it. And once again, how can somebody be holding a championship, have an undisputed streak, not get a shot at the AEW championship? And you look at the AEW championship, like they've not had good champions. Their first one was Rio, and then Nyla Rose for a while. It's like, well, Nyla Rose has a lot of potential. It's not been memorable, and he went through a couple of people, and now you're doing Tony Storm versus Mariah May. And I've said my issue with Tony Storm that I think like her character, it was good for a while, but it's kind of like it needs to kind of die really, and it's also kind of like, you know what, there's comedy in it, So I do think that. It really feels like AJ Styles, James Ellsworth type of stuff. Really, like you gotta just you gotta just really drop it, really, and you gotta just like go to a very serious storyline. So why would you put Stephanie? Why would Stephanie Vaquer want to be in that division when? And I understand too that you look at WWE. There's some issues too. That whole thing about Dominic Mysterio being Eddie Guerrero too, really, being like, a just basically being passed around between Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley, that's kind of been done really. I think, like as I said, I think that people find it funny when you watch a guy, just be this playboy between women. Because WWE knows how to get off of illicit emotions. Like there's something to say about that, really. There's also something to say about the women's NXT title, where you don't really know who's the champion of that, and it's not really celebrated. And I believe Bayley's the SmackDown champion. But I think in WWE, at least the thing is that they can kind of fluctuate things. Like they can always get the title off of Liv Morgan. They can always get the title off of Bayley. They can always get the title off of their next person. They do have a mix of women feuds that I feel are a lot more serious. It's great exposure for women. To be in WWE versus AEW. I mean, like as I said, Stephanie Vaquer, imagine if she was in NXT for like a year or two, and then imagine if she's on the main roster, and imagine if she has that momentum. Imagine they said something like, okay, well in AEW, you were kind of like this underdog female wrestler, and a lot of people like you. A lot of people like how you do have like this maleficent cosplay and all this stuff. Imagine if you had her like win against like maybe a Bayley at a WrestleMania. You see like the privileged girl versus the Stephanie Vaquer, the woman who has to work hard and overcome it, like an underdog or somebody getting close but never really getting it. Like maybe like a Benoit type. Eventually they're gonna get it, but they have to go by the book, do the right thing, do the technical stuff, and then when she wins, it's going to be a big moment. I think then, that really establishes something. I think that she has a lot more opportunities in WWE versus AEW, and I think that, as people will say, is that when you work for WWE, it's a very organized company. I think that when Vince was in charge towards the end, it was very much a cluster mess, and that's just not good, really. Who would want to be part of a company that's like that? So I do really feel that, for a lot of just reasons, definitely for Stephanie Vaquer's sake, WWE's the better company. I think it's more organized. They have a very clear direction. I think with AEW that there's significant problems in the women's division. It's very, like as I said, it's very there's a lot of spontaneity in it, and there's very, very poor utilization of people. Like you had Saraya come in, and it's like, you have Saraya, Taya Valkyrie, Tony Storm, Britt Baker, Nyla Rose, Athena, Queen Aminata, who's been doing a great job, and a couple of other people who could be bigger deals. And then I think that it's really just, as I said, very run of the mill. They'll just put two people together, and then they're not really going to follow up. Really, I think that they really don't know how to. If you go there, as I said, you almost become like a Will Ospreay in the sense that if you're somebody that Tony likes and you can get yourself over, you're going to be consistent. But if you can't do those things, you're just like you're almost like a Rusev. Even though he was injured. He had some popularity, but he's not really maintained it because he's not maintained it. He's at home really, so you can see that also happen to Stephanie, where she has some popularity. If she can maintain it or not maintain it, or if she'll be sitting at home or WWE at least. They'll be like, okay, well, she has these strengths, here are weaknesses. She's going to be practicing. She's going to be working on these things, and if she and you give her 6 months, and if she can do it, she stays. If she can't do it, move on to the next person. But at least we're going to give the expectation. Really, I think that with WWE, there's more of a chances for her to become a big deal. Really, not just one great match in AEW, and you don't know if they're gonna they know how to just make her into a star, or if she struggles in a certain area, how can they help her overcome that. So I do kind of think that WWE is a better thing for her, and then also it says something that if she's always wanted to be there, there's that thing in life really where you have to move on to something better. I just had a boss who was really great, David. He actually was working on the night shift for 3 years. It really got to him health wise, and he wants to work during the day shift. And a lot of people were a little sad because they're like, he's a great manager, but he just had to do what's best for him, really. And that's what life is. So Stephanie Vaquer, she didn't think about she didn't think about anybody's happiness but her own, really, to go to WWE. And that's what you got to do in life, because sometimes what happens in life is that if you always think about others or always think about what your fans want, sometimes what happens is you make yourself very miserable, or sometimes in your heart of hearts which one's a better choice, really. And if you don't go by that, you can miss a great opportunity. Like, look at AJ Styles. A lot of people were upset with him. They left TNA Wrestling, but they said that he was going to be cut like 40% or 60%, and be told, okay, you know what, you're going to be the champion for over a year. We're going to rebuild the company, but you have to kind of get a pay cut to help us rebudget ourselves. No, but you look at what he's done. He's become the IWGP champion, and then he went to on the main roster, and then he was the WWE champion for the same length as the Macho Man Randy Savage. He was one of the few people that was a WWE champion for more than a year. He's been in WrestleManias. He's actually the last person who had a match with The Undertaker. Even at WrestleMania, you could say, with even though it was like during the COVID WrestleMania, look at all these great things that AJ Styles did, and he could have stayed in TNA Wrestling, and he could be feuding with Joe Hendry, or they can just be like saying, okay, the most we're going to give you is $100,000 a year. Or something like that. He could have been there a long time. He could have been the TNA Hall of Fame, but I think deep down he would have been like, man, I could have been WWE and I could have done all these things, really. But I chose to be with the company just to make the fans happy, and he could have just seen all these opportunities go up in smoke, really. As I said, I think he makes like $3 or $4 million a year. Well, in TNA Wrestling, he'd probably be making like 100 or 200 grand right now. And he would definitely be doing a lot more work, and definitely he would not be he would not be as a big deal or around as much exposure, really. So he's another great example of somebody who just said, what, he has to do what's best for himself, he has to do what's best for his family, he has to do what's best for his dreams. And Stephanie Vaquer definitely has that. Wish her well in AEW. She definitely deserves. I wish her well in WWE. She definitely made the choice to go there, and she has to live up to expectations, And definitely she can enlist some more crowd reactions like that. She's definitely going to be a big star, really. And definitely if you want to be a bigger deal, and you definitely can enlist the reactions and just get emotions out of people and work hard and do all those great things, for right now, WWE is the place to be, really. And then the other things, you look at something like Jade Cargill, like as I said, she's been champion for close to 550 days. What will happen if she stayed in AEW? I think that her star power would definitely would go down, really, So sometimes WWE is the best option, and it's the best option for Stephanie, and I'm proud of her because she needs to just do what's best for her.